Morning, guys. So stocks are down. I'm not putting any more money in it for the next week or two because it's not payday yet, and I've got a lot of expenses coming up, and I've got expenses owed. So so we'll do something else. We'll do a bit of an update. Been listening to a lot of the stuff out there at the minute, and I just want to shape some ideas out there because I do think a lot of people have lost their way. The incident with the train, it's interesting how the dynamics of what people are saying have come out. So you got people on the left that were saying, "Oh, the people will be so gleeful if it's a foreigner or blah blah blah," but he was British. He was British, and firstly, I don't think anybody of a normal mindset is that way inclined. So the first thing is, right, incident on the train. First thing is you're thinking of what's happened, what's caused it, where is it. That's your first thoughts. The assumption that it's a foreign national is further down the line. Now, it's not racism to assume it's a foreign national, because it normally is. Sorry, it normally is. Because I look at it from the 80s, because my father was in the armed forces, so I spent a bit of time, well, all my childhood in the military. As such, it wasn't guys from Africa and Muslims blowing things up. It's normally the IRA, which they're white. But the fact is, you had to be a lot more alert. You used to check under your car for explosives. I was doing that as a kid. You used to check it under the cars every time you got in it. My father was in Ireland after Bloody Sunday, after the Paras, because they had to go and mop it up. Even going shopping, you used to carry a pistol. So this thing isn't about racism. It's about reality. Reality is the government's not to be trusted. They're blatant liars constantly. Whether it's the police, whether it's that twat Starmer, whether it's Rachel Reeves, Lammy or whatever, they are not to be trusted. And I would say, in my opinion, but the facts are already out there. If you compare their manifesto across what they've actually done, if you compare the Welsh choir boy story, then you're starting to get into the police, the BBC, the BBC have now been caught out with the Trump stuff, and I'm sure now that thread's been pulled, you'll start to see a lot of other lies actually start to be verified, because the left rely on shouting people down. That's all they've got. They don't do physical violence because they're not strong enough. They're just shouting. But what's my point? My point being is, if you're centre or right, just keep calling it out. They're not used to that. They're not used to it. Because let's face it, you're like me, I would guess. Well, you just want peace and quiet. You've got enough problems. You've got your mortgage, your car's breaking down, arguments with the wife, whatever it is. And then you're getting all this bigger stuff going on. But my view is, you need to just make it, I'm not listening to it. And it was interesting. I spoke to somebody probably about 6 weeks ago now, or longer, because he didn't want to say about his political views. He says, "Oh, people would say I'm far right," and I just said, "No, you're probably central." It says the left have just kept going left. You haven't moved. It says check your viewpoints for the last 40 years, and you probably find you haven't changed at all. Oh yeah, and he agreed because the reality is you're not the problem. They're the problem because they're always in your pocket. Everything they need is in your pocket. They don't work. And if they do work, it's normally in secure government jobs with nice, comfy pensions. Um, and the funny thing is, what upset them in the last week is people keep referencing the Shire, as in the Hobbit, which I believe was based on that dynamic of people that are disconnected from the rest of the world. And I've seen it firsthand. I mean, when I was I was a long time ago, I was working up in a Merthyr Tydfil, building a meat processing plant right on the top of the hill. It was bloody freezing up there. We went to a little cafe. I remember it looked like it was like a TV set almost, because it was like a 1970s style place, and then had like the chairs and little red, the tablecloths were red and white checks, so it looked clean and tidy, but it was from a different era. And I remember the one behind the counter saying to some of the people on the left, "Oh, these guys are from over in England." Merthyr Tydfil's in Wales. It's not that far. We were driving there daily, but they obviously don't need to go much further than where they are. They're happy where they are, and you'll find people in Gloucester like that. You'll find people in Worcestershire like that, because the communities are big farming communities, and I'm happy where I am. It's the same as an old ex-girlfriend's parents went to the same place in Wales for over 20 years as a couple, but the husband went there from his childhood as well, which means it was probably about 40 years he'd been going to the same place every single year. Now that is why a lot of these people are disconnected from what happens in the cities, knife crime and whatever, because they generally don't have it. Although at Evesham, there used to be a lot of, also used to find there was a lot of people getting shot with shotguns for some reason. Because I always remember it, because you're thinking, not a case of how often, it wasn't even a case of the crime, it was a case of how often it happened. Because, you'd read the newspaper, husband kills whatever, and it's shotgun, and it's, and I'm not talking about every week, I'm probably talking about like 3 times a year or something, but you're just thinking, they should be allowed shotguns over there. But the reason it gets into this is I kept hearing he was British, and people go, "What's your connection to the UK?" Because if you talk to people that are predominantly Pakistani, Indian, African, Jamaican, well, to be fair, I'd separate a lot of the Indians as well, because they'll actually say just British. But you'll find people will say Black British, Pakistani British, Jamaican British. They subgroup themselves, because when they talk about this thing, British passport, they just see it as the passport. But there's a bit more detail to it than that, and there's more on the front page, but I'm not giving you my passport number. But if that's all you see, then you're not British. Being born in the United Kingdom doesn't make you British. Yeah, but my passport says I'm British. You've got no identity. You're choosing not to have an identity. In a legal term, you are British, but you're not doing anything that is British. You've got no allegiance to the country. You've got no allegiance to the flag. You've got no allegiance to the people. You're just freeloading from the passport. Sorry, you don't like it. Tough. I accept it. I accept it. Because I'm Scottish Irish. My British passport is not a passport to me. It's part of who I am. The Isles is part of where I come from. Eating dough balls and what's the one my wife hates? I'll come back to that in a minute. But eating things like dough balls, fish and chips, parsnips, kippers, because I like kippers. I'm Scottish Irish. A lot of my connections are from the family that's passed on through me. So it's like my grandmother, a lot of the food, really good at cooking food. Lots of Scots mince and potatoes or tatties. And my identity comes from the people I belong to, which are Scottish and Irish. That's my community. And they're a British community. And they're a Scottish community. It's not just a passport. It's about where you come from, your history, your dynamic of what makes you proud to be British. If you're not proud to be British, I bet you need to look at why. Your ideologies, your beliefs, who's told you what. Because I know myself, even when I went through schooling, a lot of the stuff in the schools were things, history was Romans and Vikings. Not about the invasions, not about how Scotland evolved, or getting things like Battle of 1066 and, history, and not about how the Romans come to the UK and failed in Scotland. It was just wishy-washy middle-aged women nonsense, because it's all created from the 60s onwards when they started leaking into the education system. So it becomes more about the housing, and can we make a woven fence and knitting, and nothing about the history that connects it. Nothing. Just nonsense. Same as when at secondary school in the UK, because I was studying in Germany before the UK. In Germany, my history, because I was doing modern history, was the Iran-Iraq War, Berlin Wall, and it was about the realities, not what I was getting in the UK when I did my final education in the UK, where canalways, toll gates, and crop rotation. Subjects nobody cares about, completely irrelevant in modern society, and on top of that, non-identity. Not how, say, Edinburgh was the medical capital of the world, and why. And like things like grave robbing and things like that being, stuff that had a bit of interest, not a bit of history about the plague, the Crusades, Battle of Nelson, Battle of Waterloo. things that actually inspire and create an interest in history, even if you're not really interested in the people. Sir Arthur Wellesley, Master and Commander, Prime Minister, and Duke of Wellington. These aren't things that a lot of people would even know these days, because wash it out. Assembly, every week we'd have the flag, the Union flag. We'd get fables from priests every week. What's my point? Structure, education about the nation you're part of and belong to. A structure that is developed around the history and dynamics of what makes the kingdom. What have you got now? More fixations on weird ideologies about trans things and stuff, which shouldn't occur, in my opinion, in schools, because those changes, you've got plenty of your life to decide what you want to do. Take it public too early, you're probably not developed any friends and never will. You're not going to get acceptance just because you demand it. Acceptance comes through connection. That's why when you can have a raving racist that will sit and talk with Mohammed at his news agents for about 20 minutes about the football or something else, and then come out and still be a racist. It's about connections. Kids should be allowed to be kids, but structure, identity, belonging are what most people want. Whole life is based on being part of something. It makes it so much easier. Life's crap for everybody. So why are we fixated on trying to destroy things that introduce structure? It's like religion. As you know, I have no problems with people of religion because I work on a basic thing of do no harm. If you're doing harm, or the religion's doing harm by its interpretation, then it's a problem. It's like the Crusades is a rewritten piece of history. If you look at why the Crusades happened, it's not the version you're being told. Even in Spain, I've never heard anybody mention the Spanish Inquisition, because I look at the good and bad of everything. My interest in history? Strategic. I actually enjoy military strategy. I like seeing how people did things that were impossible. Or the brute force of numbers. When you look at what people achieved through history. But what disappoints me is how many people think this is all they are. Because, do you know what? You're a piece of because if you're only worth that means your allegiance is with wherever your parents come from. And I know a lot of you guys get brainwashed that way. See, in my society, my parents wouldn't accept that. My dad served with people from around the world. So in Hong Kong, he served with the Gurkhas. When he did his passing out parade, I haven't got his photo here, but he had his picture with Prince Charles. And there was, I think, 2 or 3 black guys that were from Jamaica that were there. Jamaica or Barbados? They were there to train as soldiers and had to pass out. They had to qualify. And they were too stupid. But they just kept them cycling through until eventually it clicked. Anybody else would have been thrown out. But they couldn't let them fail because they needed them for that contingency piece or whatever they were up to. Well, what's my point? DEI is not new. But it wasn't just a case of, oh, well, that, because you're black. No, no, let me expand it out a little bit. When my father did his sergeant exam, he failed the first time. And if somebody knows in sports, I think, I'm sure he was at Olympic level, in the sense he did actually go in the Olympic team. Because a bit like when I did my judo, when I trained for judo, the guy that was teaching us was a British judo champion in the Olympic team. But the point being is, the guy wasn't smart enough to do the sergeant's exam. Now, my father failed, and you've got to wait a year to do it again. But Dad went back, the guy was still there. He was still there till he passed. Because if you're in the army and you're good at sports, you do what you want. I remember when my dad was guard commander, because he was complaining about a corporal, because the corporal was on guard with my father, because he got a phone call because I think it was a brigadier. The brigadier wanted this guy to go and play cricket because he was really good at cricket in Berlin tomorrow. So my dad gets a call and says, "Why is this guy still here?" This is the brigadier somewhere. "Why is this guy still? He needs to be in Berlin. There's a match tomorrow. Blah blah blah. There's a car coming to pick him up, or was it a Land Rover? Yeah, I think it's the old snatch Land Rovers. It's a Land Rover coming to pick him up. You need to get somebody else on for guard because going to play sports. And if you're good at sports, you very rarely do your job in the army because other people get that opportunity while you go in, do stuff for the army. So being good at sports in the army, fantastic life. I don't knock it, to be fair, because a lot of them were at professional level. They were good. This is why you see some of the rugby players buy themselves out because teams want them. But anyway, what was my point? Well, being in the British Army gave me a lot of identity, a lot of structure, a lot of respect for being part of a bigger group. That you function as one and only as strong as the weakest person. So that's something I carry through my own life. That you may have the dumbest idiot you've ever had to work with, but your job is not to run them down, it's to build them up. You pick them up, you carry them, because unfortunately, he's on your team. Now, today's society, they've tried to make that a wishy-washy version, where they think everybody that works for a living in the UK has to fund everybody from the rest of the world. They don't. If somebody thinks this is all that matters and that's their only connection to the UK, I owe them nothing. I don't even owe them friendship. And why did I get what sparked this is the whole train incident thing where they were going, "Oh well, yeah, he was born and bred British, blah blah blah." What? Just because he's got this doesn't mean he's British. I mean, they haven't even talked about why he did what he did. Now, wrongly or rightly, and I don't know if it's validated, but there was somebody that put a video clip up that said that the guy was shouting Allah Akbar. I don't know if that's correct or not, but it was straight after the incident and it was allegedly a passenger on that train. So I don't know. But at the same time, I do remember the 80s and I do remember many an incident with the IRA. And I do remember some of the stuff from my childhood being in Ireland. But it doesn't mean I hate the Irish, because I'm Scottish Irish. So even myself, because we have division in Scotland. the Catholics and Protestant thing is still ongoing. It's still ongoing. People pretend it's not there. It is. But being a chocolate Scot, as I get called, which is like the chocolate Santa, where it's just out. You got the coating on the outside, you know, like the plastic, the what do you call it, silver foil with a picture of the Santa, and there's just chocolate, and in the middle it's hollow. That's what they call it, chocolate Scot. So I won't use that terminology with the guy on the train because you'll instantly go, oh, racist. No, because it's actually to do with the chocolate itself. The bit in the middle is hollow. In other words, there's no connection. But the weird thing is, I've probably got a stronger connection than a lot of Scots. Not most Scots, that's unfair. Because I do have a lot of time for Scotland. I love Scotland. In the same way, when I go there, I do a lot of the historical stuff. I go and see, went and seen William Wallace's sword, climbed up Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh, and I'm just connected there. It's just home. You feel it when you cross the border. But anyway, people just need to re-establish their roots, actually connect with something. And actually tell people they're trying to run something down, just go, based on what? He's British because he was born in Britain. Okay. What does that mean? If his passport's his only connection to Britain, for me it's not deep enough. There's no ideology, there's no respect, there's no connection. There's a pure hatred. There's a belief system that the world owes them a living. Shocking horror. The most underserved community in the United Kingdom is young white males. Nobody's helping them up. My university degree, it's less than 8% of that is for white males. That's a reality. Because they actually categorised everything else and left the white males out. Specifically. Because you can't actually put the category that you hate, can you? Because then you'd be shown as being a racist. But you can put your BAME, you can put your females, you can put every other demographic, like learning difficulties, but don't put the white guys, because you can see that we're underserving them massively. Now, I would say that's a betrayal on the nation. Hey ho, but we're seeing it with the army in that now, because people won't serve. And it's predominantly made up of poorer families which come from Scotland and Ireland. May shock you. Oh, sorry, Scotland and Wales. It must have been, I remember my dad's unit, there must have been at least 18 TAFs and at least 10 jocks, but it was a small unit. You think, well, that's not a lot. It says, yeah, but I think my dad's unit's supposed to be like 600 strong, but it's predominantly what do you call it, reservists. So there's nowhere near that. There's probably less than 100. So within it, out of that, I'd say Welsh and Scottish probably made up 85 to 95%, and they predominantly come from poorer families. And now we're telling those poorer families they're scum. They owe they owe people money for repatriation and money for having slaves that they never had. I'm so tired of this crap. As you can see, I'll just laugh it off because I just think these idiots, they really need to go and review their own history, because Lenny Henry, for me, is just a walking joke. And is his wife that little fat thing, Dawn French? Because I know they used to have French and Swords, and I'm not sure. I think it is. because she's just got in a bit of bother with her pro-Palestine, whatever nonsense, anti-Israel nonsense. But the point is, there you go. Because you had your little Badil, was it? I'll leave Newman and Badil to one side, but you had Rick Mail, Jennifer Saunders, Dawn French, Lenny Henry, and that socialist writer. I can't remember his name now. Oh, he wrote loads of stuff, but the point is, they were leaking in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. They were already setting laugh at everything, hate everything, socialist dribble, and it doesn't work. It's all right if you're a wealthy person because you're crapping on other people's doorsteps. When it comes to your doorstep, you suddenly go, I don't like this anymore, because you might end up with a Venezuela. You might end up with a Cape Town or just South Africa. You might end up with a Cuba, because that's where it's heading, as if this has never happened before. Absolute idiots. Anyway, thanks for watching. Catch you later.